Hello and welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. If you're looking for a polished production of an Aberdeen podcast, this is probably not the place to be. But if you're looking for a polished product of an Aberdeen team, Jimmy Thelin's Reds are certainly the team to be, Callum. And hopefully that run can continue this weekend as the Dons head to Parkhead. It's been 24 games since we last beat Celtic, but is confidence high ahead of this weekend's trip to Parkhead?
Well, you know what they say, 25th time's a charm, isn't it? I was at my granddad's earlier today, and he was saying, "Oh, will we ever beat them?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is the time." I'm just trying to talk it into existence here. It'll be a tough game, but we're probably in the best spot we've been in how many of those last 24? Probably most of them. So if not now, when? Essentially, is what I'm thinking. I'm just allowing myself to believe for a brief moment because I know that on Sunday it could all just become crashing down.
Well, hopefully it's not on Sunday because the game's on Saturday.
No, I mean, by Sunday it's come crashing down. All right, Glenn, you panicking?
I see what you mean. And Phil, given the fact that we're coming off an international break, as Callum said, does this pose the best opportunity for an Aberdeen side to go and finally stop the rot effectively against Celtic? Both teams were on fine runs of form going into the international break, but if you look at Callum, what we had going into the international break, Aberdeen have had a lot of call-ups to the international squad. Celtic themselves had a lot of call-ups, albeit James Forrest, Greg Taylor pulled out of the Scotland squad, but you've had Alistair Johnson and Aaron Trusty away over in the Americas. So, Phil, how does your confidence fare the fact that we're now playing Celtic off the back of an international break?
Yeah, I think, basically just echoing the exact same as Callum said, there's a little bit of belief there for the first time in a while going to Parkhead. But I don't know. I was very much in the camp of the international break, just came at the wrong point for us. I think just in terms of the momentum, which is kind of the little niggling doubt at the back of my mind that, maybe the momentum being stopped by the international break will cause an issue. But no, yeah, like you say, I think it's as good a chance as any, really. Hopefully we see a flying Nicky Devlin as well after his cameo appearance the other night. Hopefully that just boosts him a bit. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a strange feeling going into a game at Parkhead and not actually just immediately writing off, a 5 or 6-0. So yeah, no, I think we've got a good shout for causing a bit of a shock.
Well, let's hope we can go down to Celtic Park and cause a shock. I guess that will be seen as that, given our recent record. In terms of confidence, to use a word that Phil mentioned there, Callum, I'm sure Dimitar Mitov's confidence has taken a bit of a knock based on the international roundup. A clean sheet in the first game against Luxembourg, but then conceding 5, including an own goal, obviously in unfortunate circumstances and quite a high standard of goals put past him. But as I was texting Phil last night, at least he's got it out of the way ahead of the trip this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not ideal timing, however, and I suppose you combine that with maybe the couple shaky moments from set pieces against Hearts as well, or maybe two's even been harsh. But maybe it's not the most ideal timing, but I guess if he's going to learn from it, then that's okay. I was looking, actually, I saw Northern Ireland have won 5-0. Who are they playing? Oh, they were playing Bulgaria. Oh, no, that means Dimitar Mitov win goals. Oh, no, they've only had 4 shots on target and they've conceded 5 goals. I was hoping that maybe he'd, saved a few, it was just absolute worldies and he'd kept a few out as well. No, not quite so much, but if he's going to do it for anyone, I'd rather it was for Bulgaria rather than us.
I think I also just want to add as well, conceding to Josh McGuinness in 2024. Immediate red flag here. What is going on? What is going on?
Yeah, I think that blew your mind more, Phil, seeing Josh McGuinness back on the score sheet. In terms of other Dons on the international break, very uneventful for Slobodan Rubezic. No minutes for the Montenegrin defender. Good news for us. Jack McKenzie and Kevin Nisbet also not featuring at all for Scotland. But as you've already mentioned, delighted for Nicky Devlin to make his debut for Scotland and come on and actually play a part. What a vital block, earning Scotland a precious point. But Phil, I guess going into this weekend, it's that midfield and forward area that's going to really come to the fore of the selection debate. And for those that watched the Finland game, more so probably being interested in the game against England, Topi Keskinen really flourished on the left-hand side for the Finnish national team. But we've so far seen him on the right due to the inclusion and form of Jamie McGrath. Is there a possibility, Phil, we could see them switch positions? So we see Topi on the left and Jamie on the right? Or is it just a case of Jamie's undroppable on that left-hand side, so Topi has to be shoehorned in on the right?
No, I think it was quite the talk of Twitter, really, was just how comfortable Topi looked out on the left. But I think as well, in terms of, I think we spoke about it so much at the start of the season, the unpredictability of this Aberdeen team. It's almost the fear of the unknown in terms of how we were going to play, how Jimmy was going to react to games and whatnot. I'd maybe quite like to see a little bit of, switching wings throughout the game, really just to try and keep Celtic on their toes. Johnson, and depending on who's starting at left back, whether it's Vale or Taylor if he's back fit. But I think they're fullbacks that are maybe prone to picking up a card here and there. So if you're going to attack with Topi, with whoever's sort of walking that tightrope, I don't think it's a bad shout to just sort of have him almost getting that freedom to pick his side whenever he chooses.
Yeah, I was doing the opposition view for the Cynic at the beginning of the week, Callum, and kind of on that point that Phil mentions, the Celtic fullbacks love a booking, Alistair Johnson in particular, and it's just something that I thought maybe we could exploit with Topi and that explosiveness against Alistair Johnson, who will probably only have been back into the country possibly tomorrow, given I think Canada are playing tonight. Aaron Trusty as well, away with the American squad, not playing, although Chris from the Cynic did say he expects Cameron Carter-Vickers to be fit for the weekend, which would see Aaron Trusty miss out. Probably quite typical of our luck that Celtic start getting players back when it comes to us. But as well, you look at Rio Hitati and Daisen Maeda away with the Japan squad. So there's a lot of travel in that Celtic squad. So potential for us to look to exploit tired legs again?
Yeah, certainly. And I suppose if Alice Johnson is to miss out, then it would be Tony Ralston come in. And he struggled for the latter page of the game yesterday against Portugal for Scotland as well. So it's more tired legs. It's hopefully something we can exploit. I did the exact same thing as you in terms of looking at did Slobodan play Montenegro's second game? And he didn't. So it was a sigh of relief from me too. So you'd maybe argue that in terms of fitness, in terms of travel and things like that, we're in a better spot than Celtic. And you do feel like in games against Celtic, you're going to need all of these little things to go your way. So that could help us. However, of course, they are very, very good. That's the only problem. But I think down the wings are certainly the points where we're going to hit them. And I've mentioned it before. I've mentioned it at the football and on Twitter and things like that as well. The fact it's Keskinen and McGrath, they're going to cause anyone problems. And then you've got bundles of pace, explosion of pace off the bench as well, potentially too, against Alistair Johnson, who maybe gets back tomorrow if he's lucky, or Greg Taylor if he's maybe just coming back from an injury. Every little thing helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of key positives. And on, obviously, as you say, Slobodan Rubezic not playing in the second game and getting a sigh of relief. I had similar thoughts when checking the Republic of Ireland stats from their game against Greece and seeing that Jamie McGrath was an unused sub after getting 20 minutes in the win over Finland. So relief for me to see players getting rest. And obviously with the way that the Finnish games worked, Topi was probably finished in the first cycle of games. So he's had that chance to rest and recover into his legs and get back to Cormack Park a little bit earlier and get back integrated. It's small little things that probably are being overanalyzed and will be kind of looked at more into by fans rather than football teams themselves. Phil, in terms of our approach to the game, Jimmy Thelin said after the last game against Hearts that he would change nothing in his approach to playing Celtic. Do you think there is potential to be defensive-minded in Jimmy Thelin, or is it a case of all-out attack in terms of kind of giving how we've seen already?
I don't think it's a case of all-out attack. I think it's a case of attack's your best form of defence, really. I mean, Celtic, whenever they look vulnerable, is when teams actually put them under the pressure and they can't just, casually stroll out from the back, get the ball in midfield, pass it around the box. If they're put under pressure, they're forced to go long. We've got Malloy and Rubezic who are quite comfortable in the air for the most part. Mackenzie and Devlin also pretty comfortable in the air as fullbacks. So I think if we're forcing them to go long and getting the ball back into our possession, I don't really see that being a bad thing. Like Callum says, it's quite nice now we're in the position where we do have that little bit of quality coming off the bench. So I think if we can sort of, make the game tough, make it a little bit gritty, try and take our opportunities when we get them, and then, with tiring legs, bring on a little bit of quality off the bench, then I don't think there really is a reason for anything to change. I think obviously we'll probably be working on our periods without the ball a lot more in training this week, because I think none of us are that sort of on the bandwagon yet to think we're going to go and dominate with 70% of the ball. But stranger things have happened. But I think it'll be important to see how we sort of react, like you say, off the ball, and how we sort of maintain the press and get the ball back in ideally high areas.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's been a lot of comment done before with Jimmy Thelин's Elfsborg sides that won games with very little possession. So Callum, I'm sure he takes kind of maybe something from that into the weekend. But just that comment there from Phil about working on the press, is there concern for you in this game in particular? More so, I think, given the fact that we're away from home, that if we do look to press Celtic, they have the players in Dyson Maeda, Nicholas Kuhn, who both got bags of pace, that can then exploit any space and potential weaknesses in this Aberdeen backline if we get the press wrong, for example.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, whatever midfield three they decide to go with has also certainly got the quality to play through our press too as well if we do get it wrong. But it's probably the good thing about the international break. Maybe they have, I know some players have been away, but they maybe had more time to work on that kind of thing, which is encouraging. And the fact that we're not playing Celtic until a little bit later on, certainly into the start of the season, then it's not totally fresh. Had it been, match 2 or 3, and then I'd certainly be worrying. But they know how Jimmy wants us to play by now, and we're starting to sort of get there. So that gives me some encouragement. Of course, there's still concern against any side, but against any Celtic side, no matter what sort of condition we're in terms of they can just play through us. But we've got a better quality about us now. They should know what they're doing. And I suppose you mentioned it as well there, without being an avid watcher of Elfsborg, certainly the talk is that Jimmy Thelin knows how to get results when his side has less possession, which also might be a good thing in that we might not play ourselves into trouble so much as well, because Celtic would certainly punish us. But that provides a bit of encouragement too, and I think we really are in one of the best spots we've been in going into a game like this for a long, long time.
And I think what's also helping going into this game is right now, to our knowledge anyway, aside from Dante Polvara, we're going into this fairly fit and healthy with the strongest possible team to select from. And, kind of you touched on about players being able to work on things for those that didn't go away. We also had a bounce game against Ross County at Cormac Park. I've seen murmurings of the score being 5-1 to Aberdeen. I know both Shayden Morris and Peter Ambrose got on the score sheet in that game as well. So, not only vital minutes in the legs for players, but confidence more so for the likes of Peter Ambrose. But Phil, you wanted to come in on something there, Callum?
No, carry on, never mind.
But in terms of a midfield three, Phil, Callum speaks about Celtic having a strong midfield three. We've seen Aberdeen kind of go with just a midfield two. Is this the game where we see a midfield three? Can't be bothered saying Palaversa must start, as does David McLennan, who also says he really should start. If we are to go with a midfield three of Nielsen, Palaversa and Shinnie, is it widely expected that it would be Leighton Clarkson that would drop out?
I would think so. I think he's not been as effective as I think he knows he can be, and as effective as we would like him to be recently. I don't know if that's maybe just a little bit of getting sharpness back post-injury and getting that confidence back. But I think it would be wise to start those three in the midfield. They're all pretty sound defensively. Nielsen and Palaversa have shown they've got an eye for, a ball in behind the defence as well. So I think it'd be good if we are sort of sitting on the counter. But again, like I said earlier, I think having that quality off the bench would also help us, and having Clarkson coming on, it's another creative player that can come in and cause problems, another player who, has an eye for goal. So I think personally my views, Nielsen, Shinnie, Palaversa midfield would be ideal. And even then, like I say, having Palaversa at Nielsen's height, if we are forcing Celtic into long balls with a press, would potentially help us win it back sort of sooner rather than later.
And I guess something that might have benefited more so Nielsen, given he's already had a handful of games under his belt for Brann, is that international break. Callum, if we were to go for a midfield three, as we've just mentioned, would you have any concerns that we then don't have, I guess, a kind of out-and-out central midfielder to come off the bench? If we are getting the run around and Nielsen or Shinnie are getting a bit leggy in that midfield.
Prevention is better than cure, I'd say. I'd certainly agree that I'd love Antti Palaversa to start this game. I'm not sure how it would necessarily look with Palaversa in there alongside Shinnie and Nelson. It certainly looked like against Hearts, Shinnie was the one that was pushed further forward, which I suppose would make sense certainly in this game if we're going to be pressing Cetlic, because he has the legs to do so, and he won't tire doing so. It would be interesting, but I just think I do agree. Palaversa has to start. He has the ability to control it in that midfield. Celtic's midfield is incredible, and we really struggled controlling the midfield, I think, against Hearts. And when he came on, it made such a difference. So I think we could really do with something like that against Celtic. His confidence as well will be really high after getting the winner too in our last game. So he has to start, and I think I'd rather start with that than go with Clarkson and then have Palaversa off the bench. But the other thing I would pose to you is, if you were going to have Keskinen, if you wanted Keskinen to be on the left, and then there's potential that Duke could come in on the right, and McGrath perhaps goes inside for Clarkson, take Clarkson out, then you've got Clarkson and Palaversa on the bench, and McGrath, has that quality about him, as well as we've seen how hard he bloody works as well. So it's another thing to think about. And what do you guys think about it?
It's an abundance of talent that we've now got in those positions. I can't see us dropping Jamie McGrath, but I guess to kind of counter your point, Callum, if you're moving Jamie McGrath into the 10 to give ourselves the pace in both Duke and Keskinen, because I do want to come on to the top kind of area of the pitch, is does Kevin Nisbet start inside or alongside Jamie McGrath if you were to move him into the 10? Because one player that I think benefits from playing off a striker or having that support, and we saw this player cause Celtic problems at Pittodrie, is Ester Sokler. We've not seen a lot of him, but is there maybe potential to even change Sokler for Nisbet with yourself?
Quite possibly, and I think, again, if you're looking for someone who'll run the channels a little bit more than Nisbet in a game like this, which we might need if we're going to be without the ball, and someone who'll press and harry Celtic's defence, then Ester Sokler could be that man. But then there's the flip side of the coin, whereas if chances are few and far between, who would you rather one fell to, Kevin Nisbet or Ester Sokler?
But Phil, as we've discussed plenty of times, yes, I think Callum makes a good point. Who would you rather the ball fall to? But we've seen plenty of time with Kevin Nisbet, how deep he drops. So if we're then looking on the press and starting the counter, you don't want your striker almost level or behind your wingers that are bursting the gut to get to the box.
Yeah, I think it is that sort of conundrum. But, it's, you look at how much chances I think Sokler's had compared to Nisbet. I mean, even when he came off the bench against Hearts, he had more chances than Nisbet had. And it's one of those things where it's just law of averages. He's bound to score one at some point. But, I think, like Callum says, I think this could potentially be a game that's decided on one chance. It could be we get one clear-cut shot within the box and it's a cut back to somebody. Sokler's record isn't the greatest when it comes to those. I think you probably are wanting Nisbet on the end of it. But Again, it just comes back to this headache that Jimmy's going to have in basically every area of the pitch, where it's a good headache to have, and we've had no reason not to trust his judgment so far. So if Sockler does start, I think there'll probably be a few people that potentially question it, but I think there's always a reason, a method to the madness, as they say. And nothing would make me happier if Sockler hits the ground running with a goal at Parkhead. That would really would do him a world of wonders.
I mean, both Sockler and Nisbet, whoever was to start in that role, would keep the height in the team. And one thing I would be conscious of is, set pieces if and when we get them, is to utilise them. And there's nothing better in this Aberdeen team than having height to attack a Celtic team, because there's been a few times over the last couple of seasons where we've either had to defend or attack set pieces against the likes of Celtic, Hearts, and we've not had the height matchups, and there's nothing more frustrating than that, Callum, because we know fine well when we go to Ibrox, Parkhead, even with one eye on that semi-final coming up, you look back to the last time out in that semi-final, that 3-3 draw, how many times was it balls into the box that was causing a Celtic backline that's going to feature Liam Scales all sorts of problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's massive, and you think back to Angus MacDonald's goal and Esther Sockler as well in the semi-final, and it's something to think about. But Aberdeen, honestly, how long has it been since we were a real threat from set pieces? And now with the height, you'd like to think we can put that emphasis on it. And I suppose then if Palaversa also comes into the side, especially if it's for Leighton Clarkson, no disrespect, then that's added there. Although you maybe lose the delivery of Clarkson, but it's something that.
I was just going to say that if Clarkson does drop out, are we missing a little bit of quality that Leighton Clarkson, well, we know he can provide it, sometimes hit and miss, but that quality from set-piece delivery that he has?
Yeah, probably, but you'd like to think, how hard is it to put the ball in the box, Jamie McGrath? Come on, it'll be fine. But it's something that we could maybe take advantage of. Celtic are good defensively, and I think if Carter Vickers comes in, then this might become a bit null and void, because he's just an absolute unit and really commands that box them. But it's something that to think about, and it's fantastic, sort of string to our bow, if you like, to be able to add.
I guess, it was a question posed by John Duncan to us on Twitter around, does Kevin Nisbet play, or is there opportunity for Sockler or Duke? If we were to go with two up top, I guess, in a sense, does that then prevent the midfield three, or Phil, is having those three players in Palaversa, Shinnie and Nielsen more important for Aberdeen going into this game to stop what we know is the engine room of this Celtic team? There was a comment about from Graham Gibb about, to stop Celtic, you need someone to man mark Callum McGregor. But, you've got Rio, Hatate and Engels in beside him. So if you're putting one man on Callum McGregor, you're going to need a couple of other players to pick up Hatate and Engels. So would you be prioritising that midfield given how important it is to Celtic?
Yeah, I think it's the exact same as you spoke about in the preview for the Hearts game. I think we'd sort of said that the game's going to be won in the midfield. Whoever dominates it's most likely going to come out on top. And I think it's going to be the exact same. I get the sort of idea of basically having somebody glued to McGregor. I think the problem there is, like you say, there's other midfielders there that as soon as you got someone glued to McGregor, freeing up the space, they've got the quality to punish the gaps that are left and pick out an attacking option. So, yeah, I'd still be inclined to say that the three midfield, I think, is more important than the two up top. Like you say, I think the potential shock would be to have somebody like Sockler in the 10, try and utilise him the same way as we did at the game at Tawdry last season, and using him to basically be the flick on man. But we're now in the different position where Nisbet's not got the same level of pace to be running on if they are played in. So yeah, I think go on. Yeah.
Could you then drop Clarkson? You still stick with your midfield two. I know poor Leighton Clarkson probably thinking, what have I done to deserve for all this slander? But could you go with Nielsen and Shinnie and then put in Sockler for Clarkson? You're speaking about Sokler being the flick on man, but just swap it and make. We've seen Nisbet be the one that drops deep, and then use Sokler's pace to take advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I'm liking all this tactical nous for getting on it now. We're like JJ Rule on the Athletic here. But
Callum's shaking his head. This is not what he came back for.
Thank fuck we're not in charge, because this would be an absolute what we'd end up with.
Yeah, I think they would really enjoy me with the whiteboard out calling somebody the flick on man instead of the target man. But yeah, no, like you said, I think it's nothing against Clarkson. I think the priority is the two holding midfielders, and Clarkson, in all fairness to him, is better as the 10. Really, he's not got the same sort of holding ability as like Nielsen, Palaversa, and Shinnie have shown. I think as well. I think again, getting on this tactical now, it's the whole on ball, off ball type thing. There start Stockler and Nisbet, you've got the chance to overload the midfield with utilising one as a 10 that drops deeper. You've got the chance to basically switch it to two central strikers. I think it does give you that sort of flexibility. And I think again, having that sort of unknown entity about us, could be something that helps. I sort of saw a comment earlier on. I can't remember who put it in, and I apologise, but I think someone had said about the Dundee game that it looks like teams have potentially worked us out, and that we sort of need that plan B. So maybe Graham Gibbs. So I think it maybe is something where we try and use that sort of unknown element to really sort of spring a shock on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Callum said, it's just as well we're not in charge. But if anyone tunes into this podcast for any form of tactical information, then they're definitely barking up the wrong tree. We've always said we wanted it to be like the chat down the pub, and this is very much venturing down that avenue after a few pints deep when we're suddenly all the next Jimmy Thelin. Back onto the midfield, Callum. I want to pick up on a point from David McLennan, who spoke about the midfield and said that we have to be a little bit kind of, I guess, streetwise maybe. Nielsen and Shinnie need to be careful, risk of picking up yellow, red cards. That was a comment from David there. Is this a game where we do need, we know that Nielsen can have a little bit of a screw loose, but do we need to show a little bit of, I guess, a sensible approach to how we do this, not just try and, I guess, poke the bear, I suppose, to speak when we go to Celtic, because the worst thing that can happen to us is concede an early goal and the heads drop.
Yeah, that is worst possible scenario for any team going to Celtic Park, is conceding early, and then the game plan's just out the window. They're comfortable, their fans are up for it, and it becomes a very, very difficult task. Yeah, we do need to keep the heads, but at the same time, how many times recently have we gone to Ibrox or Parkhead and we've been too soft a touch? I suppose, and if Palaversa is not to start, then you can sort of run the risk a little bit more of one of Shinnie or Nelson, running the line slightly a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, it's impossible to get a second yellow card when you've been booked after last week. So we'll be fine if the consistency is there. But as we all know with Scottish referees, the consistency is just never there, and they make it up as they go. But it is something we do need to be careful of, but I don't want us to be a soft touch, and I don't think that will be the case. I don't think it's possible, in fact, with Silver, Helton and Nielsen in the middle of the park.
No, and I think that's certainly something that we'll see in terms of our different approach. I mean, it can't be any worse than certainly our last 3 visits to Parkhead, when we really have been a soft touch. But to continue the theme of tactical approaches to the game, I'm going to come back to you, Callum. Andy B says, inverted Celtic fullbacks will make it very difficult. Our fullbacks will need to tuck in to centre-backs, leaving space out wide for Kuhn and that. Given your tactical nous when it comes to Football Manager, I thought you'd be the perfect one to discuss that point. Is this going to be a game that Jack McKenzie and Nicky Devlin maybe won't be as much as of an attacking threat as we're used to seeing them?
No, they won't be. I suppose at least with them, then you've got, if they are bombing forward, they also have the energy, and they will bomb back, because that's just the type of guys they are. They're not just going to half-arse it. So there's that. But in addition to Andy's point there, then whoever's out wide is going to have a lot to do defensively, and then that probably says, let's keep Jamie McGrath out wide because he knows what he can. We know what he can do defensively. We know the effort he puts in and how much he's willing to do for the team. However, I'd say with Celtic's fullbacks tucking in and coming inside, then you're also probably looking at that's an extra case for having an extra midfielder in there rather than sort of the 10 in terms of bringing in Palaversa over Leighton Clarkson, unless you're just going to drop Leighton Clarkson deeper, of course. But the poor guy is getting a kick in this episode, just unnecessarily, really.
Well, I mean, we saw under Barry Robson what happened when he kind of developed deeper, where we don't get the best out of him. And it just may be that a game like this isn't where we get the best out of Leighton Clarkson, but having someone with his quality gives us the opportunity to use him as a vital sub. Phil, Jimmy Thelin has utilised his bench very well and is very reactive if things aren't going well. We saw, I kind of don't want to speak too much about on Scotland because I know people maybe have a lot of opinion on Steve Clarke, but we saw certainly last night in the Scotland-Portugal game, Steve Clarke being very kind of positively reactive to the game and was, didn't put on more defenders to help soak up the pressure. Do you feel if, Celtic are getting a lot of the ball, Jimmy Thelin will continue to make positive changes? He won't park the bus, I guess?
No, I don't think so. I don't really think we've seen that from him so far. So I don't think it'll change now. Like you said already, he's not planning on changing how he approaches the game. And I think that no matter who you are, that should be the case when you play, the likes of a Celtic or Rangers team. So I can still see him being very positive in the sense of, I don't think it's going to be centre half for attacker. It might be like for like if defenders are looking tired or whatnot. But no, like I said, I've got no reason not to trust what he's cooking up, because he's cooking up a storm so far. So yeah, no, and just going back to the point earlier of like them speaking about Nielsen, that's something that's actually I'm kind of excited about. Seeing how he copes, I guess, in a game like this, and seeing how his sort of potential, hot-headed side, his leadership and everything all ties into one to, potentially make us a really tough team. We saw it with Shinnie when he sort of first came back and tried to G us up a little bit in these sort of games. So no, looking forward to seeing how he gets on.
Yeah, really hoping he thrives in that environment. As we always try and be balanced, both positive and negatives. So Callum, I'm going to come to you because you already talked about, bringing your Sunday down if things were to not be a positive outcome on Saturday. And of course, I'm leaving the reaction to the weekend's game in both of your capable hands as I jet off on holiday on Friday. But how much, I know we're probably going to get a little bit of a caning from the press if we were to lose. It's not, I don't know how I'm trying to word this one, because I've seen the phrase free hit being used, but I don't really like that when we're only a handful of games into the season. But defeat, it's how we react to it. I guess if we were to lose this weekend, would there be a terrible overreaction compared to what we've seen from previous defeats at Parkhead?
I don't think so. I think, he's got enough sort of in the bank right now that if we do go to Parkhead and it is sort of similar to what we've seen in previous years, then there won't be too much of an overreaction. I certainly agree in terms of it would be a lot about how we react to that, because then it's still, even after this game, there's still, Dundee United coming up at Pittodrie, Rangers, then the semi-final further on the horizon too. So I think we will learn a lot from this game either way, no matter how it goes. If this qualifies as a test now, then it'll be interesting to see if we end up with pass marks, and if not, then how can we improve on it? And I guess at least there's that hope as well that if it does go terribly wrong, that with the semi-final on the cards, we can then use this game to learn from it. But it's not a free hit. We've won every game so far. We want to keep that going as long as we possibly can, and get something out of this game would be ideal.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I know Phil probably fully agrees with the comment on screen from David McLennan, where he says, it isn't a free hit, it's the chance to shut up Tom English. An interesting point from Paul Donaldson has come in as well. Paul saying it'll be a good benefit for Jimmy to have Peter Thelin there beside him on Saturday, who of course managed to get a drop Tawdry and took Celtic all the way to penalties at Hampden. Phil, we've spoken about the importance of Peter Thelin when Jimmy's come in, and Jimmy himself has spoken about it as well. Will there maybe be a word in the ear from Peter towards the manager, given the positive kind of results he's had, certainly over the grand scheme of the last 24 games against Celtic?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, like Callum will attest to, when I drunkenly spoke to Peter at Player of the Year, even by his own admission, he said that, they should have won it. They should have won it, and he was really upset that they didn't. So I think, if you're wanting a mentor in your ear about beating Celtic, and giving them a good game, at least he's the man you want. But yeah, like going back to your point on overreaction, I think the only people that are going to overly react will probably be the media. Much like David was saying about Tom English. I think the people that want us to lose the most are your classic media outlets that I think cannot wait for our row to go. And I think if we do lose on Saturday, I think they'll paint it as some sort of big crisis at the Tawdry. I predict it now, but yeah, no, I think Peter's going to be important to not only that, but I think probably try to keep everyone a bit grounded as well. I think he was good at reining in, like we said earlier, the hot-headed nature, potentially Shinnie and Nielsen. I think he was quite good at reining them in a little bit and making sure they prioritise their importance of being on the pitch as a leader over, some sort of rash challenge.
And I think, kind of what you just mentioned there about your drunken ramblings to Peter Thelin, maybe that last game and the feeling, obviously there was the controversy with the late VAR and incident, a bit of motivation there to go and prove that we could compete with Celtic, or we certainly can compete. You and Grant saying, we've got to be realistic. Celtics will be favourites. We might not get a result. For him, it's just about application and attitude if we lose. And Callum, I guess that goes back to the point that you've already made. One, we don't want to see us being a soft touch in this game. And the attitude, if we do lose, we've got 2 huge games coming up at Pittodrie, which look like they're going to be sellouts as well. And it would be how we were to react if it was to be a negative result at the weekend.
Yeah, it is a lot about that. But to be honest, we've been saying the same thing over the years about any time we go to sort of certainly Parkhead, maybe less so Ibrox, but in terms of go there and leave everything out on the pitch and don't be that soft touch. And if Celtic are just simply the better side on the day and we've given everything, then no Aberdeen fan will complain about that, you wouldn't think. So for me, it is a lot about that, but there's still a little bit about me that would just fucking love to go and beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would really love if we could get at 3 points and then really put the cat amongst the pigeons. To be honest, I know people maybe won't agree. Even if we were to get a draw, I think that would still put the cat amongst the pigeons, because I feel there's a lot of media personalities, one that's already been mentioned on this podcast, are fully expecting us to lose this game and probably lose the game comfortably. So it'd be really good to prove a lot of people wrong and also give you boys something positive to speak to, because we speak about overreaction and trying not to. And I'll be tuning in from the Sun Lounger to hear how much you may overreact or positively react. I think Callum might self-combust if we win at the weekend as well. But I'll definitely be keen to tune in to that episode. But it's just nice, Phil, I guess, final point, to be going into a game against Celtic on a positive footing and with a little bit of optimism.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said earlier, I think it's the first time in a while where I'm actually not immediately thinking we're going to get played off the park here. So yeah, makes a change. I was speaking to somebody the other day, speaking about obviously the semi-final, and I was saying to them the first game my dad ever took me to Hampton was the 9-0 at Celtic. So it can't get any worse than that, was basically the way that I've looked at Celtic since then. So yeah, but what a change to actually, feel like we could, like Callum says, there's a bit of me that just wants to get something, feels like we might get something, and it would be so ideal if it did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul Donaldson saying the fact that Chris Boyd has come out and said he wants Celtic to win the game says it all. And Chilling says he doesn't want to split Celtic and Rangers. He'd happily let them take second and third place. I think we would struggle to peel Callum and many Dons fans off the roof if that was to happen. So quite a positive place to end. And as I said, a positive podcast going into a game against Celtic is rare to find. Hopefully, when this podcast returns next week, both Callum and Phil have levels of positivity to discuss. They will be looking back at all the action from the game against Parkhead and previewing Saturday night football as that returns as the Dons host Dundee United. So thank you very much to those of you who have tuned in live with us here on Wednesday night on the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if you've been watching. Follow us on the audio platform, and you can follow us on social media at RTG_podcast. Until next time, we'll see you then.